Hey everyone, it is Kia Stevens, and I just want to welcome you all to my live stream hangout on the subject of learning to love yourself. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I am the creator of the Father Swap blog, where we purpose to help women exchange their father wounds for the love of God the Father. And we do that for women who have experienced a father wound by way of divorce, abandonment, abuse, incarceration, drug addiction, alcoholism, whether your father died prematurely or a physically present father but emotionally absent. We exist to serve you. And I am so excited to have my girl, Dr. Eardie Houston. Eardie, what's up, girl?
Hey, Kia.
Hey. I am, God is crazy, y'all. God is crazy, but I'm saying the things that he does, it's like crazy. Mm-hmm. But so I met Eardie two years ago, Eardie.
Yeah.
And never would have thought that I would be able to interview her. But as we got to know each other, we were at a conference and she began to like eke out parts of her story. And I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The more and more I found out about her, and she's just one of those people where you interact with her and it's kind of like, how did you survive that? How did you get to where you are today? So I'm excited that the Lord has brought us back together for her to be able to share her story. I want to give you guys her bio, and it is extensive. There's so much to share. This girl, I don't know how she does all that she does. But basically, Dr. Eardie Houston is an international speaker, author, a filmmaker, and a servant. I love that, who is passionate about supporting and encouraging women to stretch beyond their perceived limitations and reach for excellence in their various roles in life. Raised in a trailer park and once considered trailer trash, she's a living example of how God can shatter stereotypes and lowered expectations and use the unexpected to make a mighty impact on the world. That's powerful. Eardie's journey includes overcoming poverty, abuse, and abandonment through faith, education, and determination to become a woman that passionately pursues her purpose and lifts others as she climbs. And it's with humility and grace that Eardie also serves alongside her husband. Some of you have seen them online, Dr. Terrence Houston, affecting lives globally through marriage, enrichment, and global medical missions. And I've said all of that, but I'm almost certain Eardie would say that she's most proud of her marriage and her 3 kids. She does all that with 3 kids. I'm already tired. And then her latest success, which we'll get into, is their family has authored a series of children's books, Adventures of David and Joshua, to encourage and inspire families. That is amazing. And it's going to be even more amazing once you hear how much she has overcome. So Eardie, just get us started and talk about your upbringing.
Sure thing. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kia. First of all, thank you for having me. And it's such an honor to reconnect and chat with you in this forum. Like, I just marvel at all that God is doing in both of us. Like, I'm just so excited about being used by him. It's so funny. Every time I hear that bio read, I'm just, wow, God. And I really see it as God and just how God is moving, especially as I consider the stuff that I'm about to share with you guys and your audience now, and like just the humble beginnings. And it's just a reminder that God is not limited by where we are right now, because he knows the bigger picture. Like, he knows how he's going to purpose every tear, every fear, every pain, everything, like everything in our life. And certainly that's what I'm experiencing with my journey. So there's so much. So there are just a few things that I'm going to highlight, and then we can kind of dig a little deeper. as you see appropriate. So I actually shared a lot of my story in a recent documentary that I produced last year, and it's on our website, livinglifewithebook.com, and it really talks about my life in that trailer park. And you mentioned that I was raised in a trailer park, which I was, in a very small town in Southwest Georgia. My mom, my sister, and I moved to Georgia from Philadelphia when I was about 8 years old or so, because my parents split up. My father was on drugs, and my mom saw the need to start over, and so we moved to South Georgia and lived with my grandparents, kind of here and there. And then as my mom started to get on her feet, because she was starting over, she was completely starting over with her two girls. As she got on her feet, her getting on her feet was moving to a trailer park. And, you know, we were, of course, in poverty, but there was love. I mean, like, my mom really loved us. And at the same time, she was also trying to deal with the pain that she had, right? And so there are a lot of scars that can take place when you're talking about someone trying to love even in the midst of their pain and them not being. But she absolutely did the best that she could, even in the midst of poverty, even in the midst of her depression and all of the things that she was struggling with, trying to care for herself while caring for her two little girls as well. But growing up was very challenging at times, because not only was there poverty, but I was, man, my self-esteem was like at a zero. I struggled with stuttering. I had a severe stutter to the point where at times I couldn't really speak, which is quite ironic now that I speak professionally. Like, so that's God. That's all God. And also I had like big buck teeth, which made me such an easy target for bullying. With the stutter, the poverty, and the buck teeth, like, it was like, yeah, I was a train wreck, and I was bullied severely in school. And so all of those things affect self-esteem, because I'm dealing with crap at home, and then you go to school and have to deal with all of that. And so there really wasn't much of a refuge. And, but as many of us do, we just put that in our bag and we keep going, and we keep going, we keep going. And it wasn't until years later that I realized I was carrying so much stuff around, from my dad not being around to dealing with, you know, a lot of the challenges that I had, you know, growing up with my mom and her anger and things like that that she was dealing with. And then also just the poverty. And during the time that I spent with my grandparents, they were domestically violent toward one another. And so being in a home where there was a lot of domestic violence taking place. So there was just a lot. Like, there was a lot that I had to go through as a child. But, you know, I'm reminded that there are so many kids that have similar experiences even now. There are so many women who share a lot of the same traumas that I had as a child, and they're still walking around basically looking, you know, very well put together, much like I have been for much of my life as well, without dealing with a lot of the pain or a lot of the stuff that we just stuff in our bags and we keep going. And so
can I interject just briefly? So when your mom separated from your father, was he completely gone, or did he come back in and out of your life, or how did that go?
Yeah, so he made an attempt, I think, a few times to come back. For those who know or have had experiences with addiction, and I'm sure every experience is different, but it's quite common for them to be out and then try to get clean and kind of clean themselves up for a little while, and then they're going to come back. And so that was kind of our story. But basically what happened was we all were in Philadelphia. Like, my family, like, anchored, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody was in Philadelphia. And my mom moved us to South Georgia because my grandfather had ties there. And so she moved us there without him really knowing, him being my father. Like, they were still married, but he was completely messed up at this point. So at some point he realizes that we're gone. Then he comes to Georgia, and, you know, that didn't quite work out. Like, I don't even know how long he stayed. Maybe like a week, and then he went back. And we went many, many years of like not seeing him, and then he would just pop up, and then he'd go away again, and many, many years. And
what was that like for you? Did you get your hopes up, like, you know, Daddy's coming back, or, you know, he's gonna?
No, you know what's crazy about that? So I have one sister, you know, one biological sister, and we he handled it completely different. She was the one that was always, Daddy, I don't care how many years he had been gone. When she saw him, she was running towards him, and I would be the one running away. And after that first separation, and I realized later on, it was because she had memories, like she had some good memories. And all of my memories of him, most of my memories of him, not all, most of my memories of him were of him being just basically messed up, right? And so at some point, honestly, Kia, it was like I was tired of mourning his death. Because many times I didn't know whether he was dead or alive, right? And so I would go through this mourning, and then he would show up again. And then just like he showed up, he'd be gone again, right? And so then the mourning starts over. So after a while, it was like he would come back, and it was like, I don't want to. And I, as a child, what I didn't know how to say was, I'm afraid of letting you in my heart because I recognize your pattern is that you're probably just going to be gone again, right? So it was just like, and I mean, he has an amazing testimony too about being shot point blank in the head and just like all this stuff. Like I just all these things, and it's just like, okay, I haven't heard from him in 4 years, maybe he's dead, and just kind of going through that whole thing, right? And then he pops up again. It's like, oh. So by the time I graduated from college, it was just like, look, dude. You know,
and you know, Eardie, that is something that I think if you're not careful, you can find yourself in it, and you've become an adult, and you're still blocking yourself off because you don't want to be hurt, you don't want to be abandoned again, and it's not just in your relationship with your father, but it's also in your relationship with men, and you just have this emotional guard up so that you can protect yourself. If you don't ever see it or begin to address it, it's like self-sabotage.
I carried so much of that even into our marriage. You know, like my marriage with Terrence. Not being healed from that has spilled over into other relationships, mainly my marriage, but even like friendships or just other social relationships with mentors or pastors or just whatever, like people who God may have sent to pour into my life, but I had this wall up, and I'm still healing, I think, from that in a lot of ways. But a lot of that healing has really come about in recent years. And when I say recent years, I mean very recent years. Like my dad and I recently had a very healing conversation, maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago. So when I say recently, I mean very recently. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally do. Not to cut you off, but just to say that I think that's an assumption that we arrive, you know, or that we get to these places where things don't jolt us anymore, or we kind of are tempted to revert back to our you know, protection mechanisms and things like that. I even heard Joyce Myers talk about it in a message where she was saying her tendency was to, oh gosh, I don't want to say it wrong, but it was something along the lines of like feeling nervous if everything's not okay, and if everyone doesn't like her, if the environment, and so she has to guard against that because that was unhealthy. But I was like, man, that's Joyce Myers, you know what? You know,
we all have a journey, and that's the thing. Like others, and feel like, oh, they got it going on. Their journey is complete. But none of our journeys are complete until God has taken us home, right? So there's still an opportunity for growth. There's still an opportunity for healing, and for us to get the tools that we need in order to get to where God wants us to be. And even, you know, this thing with my dad, I mean, I really have to thank God for where we are right now. He's clean now. He's been clean for, I don't know how many years. I can't really say a certain number of years, maybe 7, 8 years or something like that.
That's great.
So for the first few years of that, though, it was still, some of it is just natural consequence from him not being around, right? So some of that is just him missing out on so many of like the inside stories that we have with my mom. You know what I'm saying? Like so many of that is just natural consequence. But a lot of that too was me not really knowing how to even approach the path of forgiveness and reconciliation and okay, now he's back. So what does that mean for me? And I used to hear people talk about how God is a restorer, and it's like I can't get those years back. So what is God restoring exactly? You know what I'm saying? So
that's
just
real. Yeah.
that kind of stuff, and just really struggling with that. And over the years, though, in recent years, like I said, I have completely forgiven. I have completely forgiven, and that has come from a place of seeing him through eyes of compassion. And it's interesting. One of the things that I share with married couples as we're talking about marriage or just whatever, oftentimes when we are looking at someone who has offended us, it's very easy for us to say, oh, how dare they do that to me? I can't believe they did that to me. Well, the reality is most of us have the tendency to be the stars of our own show, right? Like we're the leading character in our own book, the star of our own reality show, and everything that we
I know I am.
Everything that we see is through the lens of
right.
It affects us. So even, as we talk about my dad, it's like, well, I can't believe he abandoned us. And man, he just walked out on me. And what about me? And I can't believe he did that to me. Well, the reality is he made a series of poor choices. And he now, has actually come forth and had those conversations with me where he has acknowledged his poor choices, but he made poor choices that affected me for sure. But he didn't do that to me. He did that and basically messed up his own life, right? And I suffered as a consequence of that. So rather than me making it completely about me, which as a child, I didn't have the tools to process this way, right? So let's be clear about that. But now, as an adult who recognizes that I'm in need of so much grace too. I've made so many mistakes in my parenting journey. My kids are only 6 and 4.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's easy for me to be like, oh, but I'm not that bad. I haven't done this. It's like, but in the eyes of God,
right.
If God is the standard, we all fall short, right? If Christ
right.
is, we all fall short. So being able to see him through the eyes of compassion and recognizing that I too am in the need of grace, and it's only but by the grace of God that that's not my testimony. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, how dare I think that, like, oh, well, I would never. It's like, okay, I am addicted to sugar.
Girl.
It's more socially acceptable, right? But, okay, we all have some tendencies to do something, right? Like, we all have something fall short in something.
Or a coping mechanism, because I think a lot of people who have addictions in their families or whatnot, there was something that drove them there and kept them there. It was a hurt, or it was a failure, or it was a trauma. And the only way that they knew how to cope, for some instances, was whatever the addiction was. And like you said, we all have our addictions. We are going to get back to your story, but I got to go a little bit deeper on this forgiveness, because what you're saying requires so much maturity. And I could see it all on you, the maturity. It's just embodying you as you talk. But what's the baby step? Like, how can you just ease into that? If people are like, they can't get past what their father did or what their mama did or their cousin or whomever, they can't get past it. What's a baby step that you can take?
That is such a good question. Okay, first of all, before I answer that question, I just have to sit in this moment and marvel, because forgiveness is something I have struggled with so much over the years. And it wasn't until I got married and Terrence has required so much forgiveness, as I have too. But Terrence doesn't struggle with forgiveness, but I have, right? So I've had to practice forgiving and forgetting again and again and again and again, right? And so for me, that was kind of the baby step, because for him and me, like for our relationship, I was like, I'm not going anywhere, right? So I have to learn how to forgive him because this is my like spouse for life. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so to get back to your question in terms of with my dad, well, so the first person that I recognized that I needed to forgive and I started moving towards steps of forgiveness was actually my mom. Because we had a lot of this stuff transpire over the years, right? As a result of her hurt, as a result of, my sister and I just kind of growing up and trying to find our way as young women, and, making a lot of mistakes along the way and just, not really having the tools of communicating and, respecting each other properly, right? So we've had a lot of hurt and toxicity and drama in our life. And I remember this one time, I was already an adult and she and I were going on a trip somewhere and she had like been working my nerves like this whole trip, right? And then we get to the hotel and I had to share a hotel room with her. And I was completely like just wiped out, like so tired and annoyed and all of this. And then she started snoring, right? And it just took me like, she did all this and now she messing with my sleep too. And so I'm just sitting there staring at her and I'm mad and I'm fuming and I'm thinking about, okay, she's snoring, right? So that's the only thing that she's doing wrong at the moment. But I'm thinking of all the other stuff that we've experienced over the years. And I'm just like mad all over again. And as I sat there, Kia, I kid you not, I literally felt God mending my heart in so many, but like I was looking at her and I started seeing her not as my mom that made these mistakes, not as my mom that did this, my mom that didn't do that. Like I saw her as a woman on her own journey. And I realized that like she did the best she could.
Wow.
So baby step would be to choose to try to tell yourself a different narrative and not necessarily like I think oftentimes we assign meaning to what other people do, right? So I heard the quote that we judge ourselves by our intentions, but judge others by their actions, right? So somebody can hurt you and you're just like, oh, they did that to me and it's all about me, it's all about me. But at the end of the day, it's like you're the center of your own story and the lead character, well, that person is too. And they're just simply on their own journey. And you just happen to get run over by it. And that's unfortunate. And those are things that need to be worked through. But maybe we can start with trying to tell ourselves a different narrative. Because the truth is, my mom does love me. She does. And a lot of times she didn't have the tools to do things a certain type of way. Or maybe I needed something else from her. She just simply didn't have the tools. She did the absolute best she could. And with my dad, I recognized that he was just messed up. And he was probably messed up before I was born. It just maybe wasn't so out of control at that point. But
and you know what? Even as you, I'm here to echo. Do you hear one? Even as you talk about allowing yourself to hear a different narrative, part of that is also allowing yourself to learn the narrative of your parents. Like what was it in their childhood? Were they given the tools in order to be healthy parents that are affirming their children and creating a life, that they didn't have? And if that's not the case, but the other thing I want to go back to is not just allowing yourself to hear a different narrative, but I'm also hearing the supernatural power of God, which I would tell anyone, don't attempt to walk the journey of forgiveness on your own in and of your own strength, because it's a supernatural work, for Jesus to come in and change and transform our mindset when we are venomously mad and angry at somebody snoring, or it's just like, this is the umpteenth thing, I have done. That's God. No, I'm serious, girl.
It's completely God. But what's funny about that? And like seriously, this whole thing about forgiveness, I'm gonna have to send this clip to one of my former pastors, because when Terrence and I first got married, we struggled hard in our marriage for like 2 years.
Wait, she said hard. Define hard.
No, I was trying to get the marriage annulled.
Oh, thank you, Jesus. Let's just stop and praise God right now. Y'all wouldn't have had the beautiful children, the books.
Oh, girl, listen, we have these moments. Like, God, thank you, Father, thank you. And it's so crazy because God led us to this church. Like, okay, so we had just moved to Houston, and when we moved to Houston, that was a faith walk. No family, no friends. We like chose 3 southern cities and ranked them on a whole bunch of stuff. And we were like, oh, Houston won. We're going to move to Houston. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have jobs. We just chose to move to Houston and figured it out, right? And so we got to Houston and we were looking for a church home, and God led us to a church, Church at Bethel's Family. Pastor Walter August poured into our marriage. And it was funny. Okay, at the time it wasn't funny at all. But I remember when we first got to that church, Terrence and I were in such a bad place. And I remember every Sunday, it seems like every Sunday for like 3 months, and Terrence will say the same thing. It seemed like Pastor August preached on forgiveness for like every Sunday for 3 months. And I'm like, did you call him yesterday? Like, what are you like? Why is he preaching about that? Like, what is happening?
Funny.
Because I struggled so badly with forgiveness. And it was like, God himself was like, girl, get over it, because I have so much that God has to forgive me for. And I still have junk that like, I don't get right. Right. And so, yeah, girl, forgiveness has been a journey, and I still struggle with it. And certain, like, I'm still struggling with that in other relationships that aren't, you know, marriage, family, some of the ancillary relationships. I'm just kind of like, okay, let me do an assessment. Like, how important is this relationship? Yeah. So pray for me. I know.
Oh my God. That's real. That's real. I know you're looking at your ancillary. I'm using it. I've never used that word before in my life.
Right? I got to do the research. No. But I recognize that that's what God requires of us, and it's not. It's not optional. It's not optional. We are to forgive, and sometimes forgiveness doesn't necessarily come with, you know, restoration of a relationship or whatever, but forgiveness and just the peace that comes with forgiveness, like the ability to like wish someone what. Let me tell you this. I have gotten to a point. It's funny because you and I were just talking about something, and we were talking about Christine Kane. Well, our mutual connection, of course, was from the conference with Lisa Turkers, and one of her most recent books was about rejection.
Uninvited.
Yeah. And she had a strategy in there where she talked about making a list of those people that you have broken relationship with, and like writing about what's good about them, and like literally praying for them. And can I tell you, like, I do that exercise. Like I do that exercise for some women in my life that I have broken fellowship with, because that has gotten me to a place where like I have literally been able to forgive them, even with the realization that maybe the relationship just really wasn't meant to be. And it's okay. But you can still love them from a distance. You can still genuinely in your heart wish them well. And so actually going through the exercise that Lisa Turkers has in that book, Uninvited, of like writing out the things that are good about them, because I don't know about anybody else, but for me, if I'm not feeling you, your jokes aren't funny, like nothing about you. No, I'm serious. It's like, I can't find anything good about you because you hurt my feelings, or you said this awful thing to me, or just whatever, right? And so what that exercise does is to remind us that nobody is all bad, right? And so there are still some ways that God is working through that person, just like God is working through me in my imperfection as well, right? And so that exercise has been so humbling. And, you know, I mean, God talks about us, you know, loving our enemies and stuff like that. And I believe that the reason why he tells us to do that is because what we don't always realize is that the people that we are having conflict with, or the people that we're seeking to forgive, those aren't even our enemies. We only have one real enemy.
Girl, you're preaching now. You are now preaching. You are now preaching.
So the people that we think are our enemies, these people aren't our enemies. Like, these are God's children too. Like, God loves them too. You know what I'm saying?
You're preaching. Yes, you're preaching.
And I can talk about forgiveness all day, because even in our marriage, you know, being able to look at your spouse, and I mean, it don't have to be marriage. It can be marriage, it can be kids, your siblings, your friends, your parents, or whatever. seeing them as God's daughter and God's son, and God is still working on them just like He's working on you. You know what I'm saying? So,
oh my goodness, Eardie, every now and then I come across these people that speak in sound bites where it's like everything they say is something quotable.
oh,
You are now in that category with several other people. I've been trying to catch what you're saying. I can't catch it. I will have to go back and watch this over and over. But that is so very good. And let me just pause and say we're talking to Dr. Eardie Houston about learning to love yourself. We've been on a tangent talking about forgiveness, but it might be because, like the pastor was talking about forgiveness for 3 months, it may be somebody who's watching this. Maybe you have been dealing with forgiveness, and this is something that you need to hear because she's giving some really great nuggets. And it's crazy. I read the book. I read Uninvited. I must have completely zoned out for that part where she was talking about this somebody and talk about their good qualities. So I need to go back and read that.
You want me to do what? You want me to write?
Yes. Yes. I also
that right there, that thing that you say you won't do, that's the thing you need to do.
That's good. That's another quote. That is another quote. I was going to say on my blog, there's a blog post entitled 6 Steps to Writing a Forgiveness Letter. And I'll link that too if you're seeing this on YouTube. And one of the steps in that is to thank the person. And so because my blog is for women with father wounds, a lot of times women are like, well, what in the world do I have to thank him for? And when I did this exercise, it was shared with me, well, you could thank them for life because they help to create you. So even if you have to whittle it down to just the most minuscule thing that you can think of, there is something to be thankful for about that other person. I'm so glad you said that. Girl, we are all over the place.
I know.
I do. There's one question I want to ask, and then we got to figure out how in the world did you get to college from the place where you were, but I'm not ready to go there yet. I want to talk about, as we're talking about learning to love yourself, what role does forgiveness play in that? Because you could look at it like, well, I love myself. Why do I have to forgive this person? That's not going to impact my view of myself. It's not going to impact it's not going to impact anything. It's outside of me.
No, it does. And I have been guilty of, I was only half kidding when I was like, let me do my assessment and how important is this person, right? But it really eats at your soul. It does. And it can eat at your peace. And so a part of me loving myself is for me to want peace in my heart. And only then can I fully shift and focus on those things that God has for me to do. I can still make an attempt to do those things, even, harboring all this stuff, but then I'm carrying this load with me. And it's hard to move freely and to give freely and to love freely when you have these walls in your heart. You know what I'm saying? And so that forgiveness frees you up, and it frees that mental space, because every time like, for example, Terrence and I, now it's funny, like we kind of do this in jest because we've learned over the years how to appropriately process our conflict and all of that, right? But like I would be mad at him and not speaking to him, and then something great would happen, and I want to tell him, and I'd be like, "Oh wait, but I'm mad at you for something."
Tell the truth.
Like
marriage, tell the truth.
Like it takes up your mental space, but like to have that part of your brain empty, and like that part of your heart that's not hard, so that you can freely serve and freely give and freely learn and freely be all that God will have for you to do. That's self-love. That's self-love.
That's really powerful when you pair that with the idea that self-love is getting your hair done and your nails done and a massage, and which that is some self-love. Don't get it twisted. Sometimes I need that right now. If anybody wants to bless me with that, but self-love is forgiving others. There's a whole new paradigm, a mind shift for us. to know that self-love is making sure I am right in my horizontal relationships with other people.
Yeah.
So yes. Okay. Go now. So now let's see, can we some kind of way track backward? We're gonna come back. Some of y'all joining, y'all like, where have you been? But we are going back to Eardie was just taking us through her life. Some of you guys, you may need to go back and see the beginning, but she had a very tumultuous childhood, grew up in a trailer park, experienced abuse and poverty. And so you go to live with your grandparents. And I'm trying to figure out although I do know, but just for our audience, because I watched the documentary. She has a documentary, but I'll give you all these links. I need you to take us from you're at your grandparents' house, domestic violence is happening, to how in the world do you get to college?
How did I get to college? I know. Girls, God.
And you were homeless at one point.
Yeah, I was kind of bouncing around. So I was with my grandparents, and then we, moved in with my mom in the trailer park. And then I ended up going back to my grandparents' house, and my grandmother died. And I ended up kind of bouncing around a little bit, and then went to live with like this lady who was like my grandfather's distant cousin at the church. And so I moved in with her, and I finished high school from her house. Now, how I ended up in college, even in the midst of all of that, it's only God, y'all. It's only like, I'm not going to sit here and just act like it's so, and even in the midst of that, I was so wonderful. It's only God. Even in the midst of that, I was a straight A student. And even like through abuse and all the trauma at home, the bullying at school, I was literally a straight A student. I was the top student in my school, not just my class. And so one day there was a gentleman there from a summer program at FAMU, or Florida A&M University. And I was living in South Georgia. So I'm in this very small rural town. And this gentleman comes to share information about a summer program from a school from a different state. And so we're just like, oh, that's fancy, But he was in a chemistry class. And I wasn't in that class. I was in a different class. But the chemistry teacher, Ms. Willingham, literally walked into my biology class. Let me pause first before I say this. I had never taken her class before. Her exposure to me at this point was her seeing me in the hallways. And maybe I'm sure she had heard about me, right? I was like a smart girl or whatever. She walked into my biology class, and Kia, she literally grabbed me by the hand, and she said to my teacher, "Excuse me, I'll bring her right back." She pulled me out of the classroom into her classroom so I could hear this gentleman share information about the summer program. Because she felt like Eardie needs to hear this. Wow is correct.
That's God.
She was used by God to change the path of my life, because I applied for that program. I got in, and it was like scales falling from my eyes. I was exposed to kids who were, of course, academic achievers, but like they had a confidence that I didn't have. They knew that they were going to college, like they kind of knew what their path was, and I was able to do the stuff that they would do. You know what I mean? I mean, like this was this academically rigorous program, and I was able to hold my own with that. And so I was like, well, shoot, if they're going to college, I'm going to college too.
That's right. Yes.
And so from there, it was like I came back to school my junior year, and there was a shift. There had been a shift that took place. And in the midst of that, God sent angels my way. I had mentors. Oh my God. One of my mentors, Mr. Emmanuel Frazier, was also a FAMU alum. And he and I connected after I got back from that summer program. He found out that I had just gone to his alma mater. And after that, he took me under his wing. And, I am the first person in my family to go to college. So there were a lot of tools that my mom just simply didn't have in terms of trying to equip me to be ready for school. But Mr. Frazier did. He helped me with my applications. He helped me with my financial aid. He helped me just really prepare myself. And let me also say this about him. Okay, this is the part where I get emotional.
Oh
no! Yeah, because here's the thing. When you don't have a father, right, it can make you so vulnerable for so many things. Whether it's people that are preying on young girls or whatever. And there were a lot of people in my life that didn't have the intent to cover me, right? But he did. He did. Like, he was like somebody who gave without anything in return, without wanting anything in return, like people who just literally want to see you win. He was the first example that I had of that outside of somebody in my family. And that just meant so much to me, even to this day. It's like, when I think about angels in my life, like I think about Emmanuel Frazier is like literally one of the first people in my life that God used in that way to show me that somebody can love you from an authentic place without wanting anything from you. Like, they just literally want to see you in a better place. You know what I'm saying? And that gave me hope. Like I think that was kind of the beginning of me starting to want a little bit more for myself, and like wanting to see what a healthy relationship would be like wanting to have, and I'm not talking about like having a romantic relationship,
right?
Like, right. I'm just saying, like, just everybody's not there to beat up on you. Everybody's not there to bully you or to abuse you or to make you feel bad. Like, there are some people in life, like there are some good people in the world that God will put in your path to really love on you and put you in a better place. And so,
and I want to just stop right there, because what would you say if there's someone that's watching this and they're like, well, that's you, Eardie, you know, that happened to you, but I don't see anybody coming into my life to love me, or I find myself around people who are not treating me the way that I believe God wants me to be treated. What encouragement would you offer to a woman who feels that way, or, you know, it just doesn't see anyone like that in her life?
yeah, that's a difficult one, Kia. I mean, I would be doing a disservice to a woman to just say, oh, just keep your heart open, and just like, while some of that may be true, the reality is there are people that are really hurting, and there are other people in life that prey on people that are hurting. And I've experienced a lot of that myself. So I certainly recognize that that's there. What I would say to that woman or that girl, or even that man or that boy, right? Because some other people
right
have experiences too. I would say that there's so much comfort in the word. And I know this sounds so cliche, but even before you see it in the flesh, like even before you see someone in real life that can pour into your life the way that Emmanuel Frazier poured into mine, God is that comfort. Like, years before I met Frazier, Christ was my comfort. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there were so many lonely nights and so many like times that I'm crying because, oh, my mom doesn't understand me, or oh, where's my father, or oh, you know, grandma and grandpa are fighting, like just all of this stuff going on. But only that true comfort that comes with Christ is like that true lasting comfort. And yes, there are people that God can put into your path to show you a reflection of his love. And I've been very blessed to have had that throughout the course of my life, and of course to still have that now. But even without that, like, God will still give you what you need, but you have to seek him and truly know in your heart that he is enough, that he is enough.
That's so good, you know, and I think that I would add to that, that it's worth taking a risk if you are not a person of faith or have not begun the journey with the Lord, and you're skeptical and you're afraid of being let down. I would definitely say take a risk to try out this God that we're talking about and see if it impacts your life, the way that we're saying it will, the way that his word says that it will. So that would also be my encouragement. But I appreciate you, Eardie, for just acknowledging that this is a hard place. It's a real place, and not to just gloss over it with Christianese or what sounds like the right thing to say, but just to be real. I appreciate that.
It is. It is real, because here's the thing. I mean, you know, it's very easy from this side of the bridge to be tempted to be like, well, all you got to do is And oh, it's very simple. All you got, but it's not. Like when you're in it, it's not that simple. And it's not a matter of, girl, all you got to do is this. No, it is a journey. And every person is going to have their own journey. And for us to just be like, oh, well, just open your heart and just try again. There are a lot of good people out there. It's like, but if you've been hurt by 40 bad ones, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, how easy it is just to be like, oh, just keep an open heart. I mean, some people are gifted in that area. Some people are able to just continue to love openly. But even those people, the people that I know that are believers will tell you it's because ultimately their faith is wrapped up in God, and just knowing that God will sustain them. God will give them the peace. God will give them the comfort. God will give them the companionship, and all of those things that they're seeking will come from God. So that's how they are even able to open their hearts again. So that really needs to happen first, right? So
right. And you, I'm not trying to catch. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, but I was saying not only that, but also he has to give us the wisdom to know how to even begin to form relationships that are healthy, which kind of leads me to, I definitely want to talk about your marriage. Like, how did you meet Terry? Oh, that's so cute. Y'all done went from annulment to, but I really want to talk. I'm sorry. I want to talk about how did you break the cycle of just what you had experienced in order to come into the fullness of what marriage should look like, and to even choose. I know the man chooses you, but I mean, to say this guy is marriage material, I'm going to date him, we're going to make this work. Or even as you shared earlier, when you were like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, yeah. Where did that mindset come from? Because that had not been modeled out to you. You didn't see that.
And I didn't start that way either. Let me be clear. So it wasn't like, okay, we got married and okay, come hell or high water, I'm not going anywhere. No. Like I said early on, I was trying to get this thing annulled. But yeah, so we met in college. We were college sweethearts, and we started out as friends. And then gradually, friend as in like a circle of friends. So there were.
I might be like friend or friend.
No, like friends. Like there were like maybe 12 or 14 of us hanging out in the summer. And by the end of the summer, our circle had dwindled down to 2. So, yeah.
Okay, sums up with that, but we don't have the time.
I know. And I don't want to start gushing because I don't want to like kind of be a distraction from where we are right now. But
you are gushing already. Yeah. You know, I mentioned the man's name, and all of a sudden you just start gushing.
Like, he really is, and it's not a front. Like the same way he is at church is the way he is at home. The same way he is at the grocery store is the way he is at work. I mean, like he is consistent in his character. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. But he is a man of God. Like he loves God. He loves me. He loves our family. He is just. He's amazing. And so
I'm going to interject because I know women right now are like, girl, that's good for you. But how can I get mine? I want mine.
No, you know what's interesting though? Like I literally believe in my heart that this was all a setup from God. I do. And I say that because when I met Terrence, I was so damaged still. It was like I had put all my energy and focus onto getting out of poverty, right? So I'm all about, okay, let me get my education. I'm in college. I'm just trying to handle it. I wasn't trying to worry about figuring out how I'm going to be in a relationship. I wasn't trying to make any new friends. It was like I wasn't nurturing any of those other parts of me. I wasn't even nurturing myself spiritually initially when I got to college. But even that, so that was actually the first thing that changed when I started dating Terrence. So I grew up going to church a lot, and I went to Sunday school every Sunday and all that. And then I got to college. I was like, I ain't never going to Sunday school again. And so I wasn't going to church at first. And it doesn't mean I didn't know the Lord. I was still praying and I still loved him, but I just wasn't going to church. And so when I started dating Terrence is a pastor's kid, and he was really in love with the Lord. Now, of course, he was still a guy, still a college student, still, completely doing dumb stuff too, like the rest of us were. But I knew that if I was going to be involved with him, I was going to go to church. And so for the most part, I started out going to church with him. And then I was like, oh, I kind of want to find my own church. And so I ended up going to a different church. But that was the first thing that shifted. Like I really got deeper in my word and started like really getting to know God more for myself and not just going to church out of habit, but like really seeking God for myself. So that was one of the first changes that began to happen. And again, this wasn't like Terrence changing me. This was God
wanting to change,
to bring me in closer. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that was the first thing. Our courtship was a long one. So we dated for 7 years before we got married. And even in the midst of that 7 years, so like we broke up and we got back together. We had long distance for a couple of years as we were finishing pharmacy school. We both got our doctor of pharmacy degrees. And then after that, I went on to do a postdoc program too for 2 years. So after all of that, then we got married because Terrence's mindset, which I really appreciate, is that he wanted to be able to provide for a wife before he took on a wife. And so when we got married, you know, he wanted to be in a place where he could say, okay, you can choose to work or not, or just kind of figure it out. And so,
yes.
No, but thankfully, but me, of course, coming from where I was just like, okay,
I'm gonna work.
Yeah, what you mean? You ain't gonna have me not working and then leave me because that's what I was expecting. I was expecting the other shoe to drop like that.
Right.
Every woman in my family. Listen, this is the God honest truth. My children are the only children in my family so far that are growing up with mom and dad, married, living like as husband and wife under the same roof, no blended family or anything like that. This is like from my mom's side of the family. So that was all I saw. So for him to say, oh, you can choose to work or not, I'm just like, after all this education, and of course I'm going to work, you know. But anyway, we got married and immediately just started running into conflict of unresolved hurt and unforgiveness and just trying to learn how to live together as husband and wife, like wanting to come together as one, but both of us were very selfish and had a lot of selfish tendencies. We were so immature. And I was like, you know what? This is not what I signed up for. I was trying to get the marriage annulled after about 2 months because I just felt like, okay, after all this time we've been dating, and I don't think either of us were really prepared for marriage though. Like I think, you know, we dated for so long and this just felt like the next step. It was like, okay, we're finished school. We finished all of our training. Now it's time to get married. And so that's what we did. So after the 2 months, I was like, you know what? I don't even think this is what God really told us to do. This is what we did. So maybe we're not supposed to be married. But God said differently. This was truly ordained by God because so much growth and so many.
What did you do? What did you do? Did you go to counseling or?
We didn't. We did go to counseling. We probably didn't go to as much counseling as we were prescribed. I don't think we went to as much counseling as we were prescribed. Right. But God did lead us to a body that really believed in marriage. And so that same pastor that I was talking about that preached on forgiveness, and his wife took us under their wing for about a year, or we like basically sat at their feet, and they really poured into us. And God used them tremendously to help to heal our marriage. And so we had to learn how to be married God's way. We had to learn what it meant to forgive. We had to learn what it meant to love one another, and to honor one another, and to respect one another, and to submit to God first. And then also to submit to each other. We have to learn how to see each other as brother and sister in Christ before we see each other as husband and wife. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to learn how to see him as God's son. So am I going to mistreat God's son? Like God is watching. God sees. It's just all of that. We have to learn all of that. And full circle moment, this is powerful. That same pastor has now invited Terrence and I to come back and facilitate a workshop at their church this Saturday.
That is amazing, girl. Y'all gonna have a serious testimony to share. Maybe some of the people are watching, but that's amazing. I wanted to ask you too, as you were learning all this stuff about marriage and all this stuff about how to view him, were you also learning to love yourself in that time? Because I remember a message that I heard that was talking about how the scripture says we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. And the problem isn't that we don't love our neighbor. We just don't know how to love ourselves. So we halfway love our neighbor the way we halfway love ourselves, or just don't love ourselves at all. So did you have to evaluate what love looks like for just loving me during that time?
And to be honest with you, like that's still a journey in progress. I think for me, it has happened in phases. So with this very intimate relationship, I had to learn how to have healthy boundaries for, so even before Terrence, really. So I had to learn how to have healthy boundaries about what was acceptable for me. Like for you to be in my space in that sort of relationship, like there were certain things that were absolutely a non-negotiable, right? And so for me, learning how to set those boundaries has been an evolution, because then it springs out into female friendship relationships too. And only recently have I learned how to set proper boundaries in there too. And realizing that I still have room for growth in self-love, even as it pertains to that, right? So there have been times, for example, that I've tolerated being dismissed or being bullied, even as an adult, simply so that I'll have a circle of friends. Right? Mm-hmm. That's not self-love. So even growing in that in recent years has been like, I mean, quite frankly, it's been a revelation. It's like, oh, wow, okay, I still have room for growth in that area. Because you would think that because I have such a powerful, strong human example of what it looks like to not only love yourself, but now to be in fellowship with someone who loves you in a way that honors God. Mm-hmm. You know, you would think that I wouldn't tolerate that from other relationships too, particularly from ancillary relationships. But it was just really a revelation. It's like, no, you still have more work to do in that area as well. So to answer your question, I would say that it is still a journey. And yes, I am still learning how to love myself. And I realize that I'm still working on that because of the way that I've realized I have allowed myself to be treated certain types of way, or, you know what I'm saying? Or even the way that I can treat others at times too. I mean, you know, let me not act like I do everything right either. And I think sometimes, like, because we haven't healed within ourselves, right? Or like, because we haven't actually done the work to find out, like, okay, where are my triggers and why is that a trigger, right? Like, why is that affecting me that way? Sometimes we don't know how to be in fellowship with other people because we haven't actually healed ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So all of that has been a journey, and I'm still learning and still growing. But, you know, like the old people used to say, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I used to be.
I know that's right, girl. And what you're saying, it really requires you to be still. And we don't live in a society that is ever still. Like, we wake up and we work out, or we check our social media feeds, and we, you know, start the coffee and the morning routine. We hop in the car, we got the radio going, listen to the morning team, or we listen to whatever we listen to. And there's never a time when we're silent. There's never a time to reflect on an interaction that we had that felt kind of awkward, but, you know, who's got time? So I hear you saying, but not saying directly, that you got to give yourself the space to evaluate, to process as you go, so that you can see, you know, was I did I have an interaction where I didn't feel loved? Yeah. And why did I not feel love? And did that tie back to something that my mama said, or my daddy said, or my cousin said, or that neighbor said, or, you know, something like that? So you can't be self-aware,
right,
if you're never quiet, if you're never still.
Too. Or even when I didn't show love too, right? Like, how have I acted out, and like, why am I acting out? And, you know, what's crazy, it's like God will allow certain things in our lives. So there have been times that we were not intentional about being still, but God would push us towards stillness anyway. Terrence and I have many seasons in our lives where it has just been us and God, where all the friends fall off, all the close connections fall off for a while, and it's just us and God. And he'll push us into these seasons. And we've learned, even in those seasons, to just be like, you know what? Something, like, I mean, there's a lesson here somewhere. Like, there's something that we need to be reflecting about. There's something that we need to be preparing for. There's something that is happening in this season. And so we've learned to not force activity or force busyness and just seeking this movement just for the sake of movement, but really seeking to just rest in him and really be still in him. When he points us to that season, it's like, okay, God, we don't always understand it, but we've learned now that, like, we don't necessarily have to know all the answers in this moment, but just seek to be obedient, and he will reveal in time, you know?
That's so good. And I am sad again. I always find myself at this place, girl, it's 10 o'clock.
Oh, it's over. No!
Yeah, I know. I feel like, do we need to do this every week? What is Kia and Eardie? What? I don't know. But this was so good. I'm definitely going to have to talk to you again, because I feel like we barely scratched the surface, and the nuggets that you were saying were so rich. They were so good, girl. It was so good. Now, I got to tell you guys, please check out Terrence and Eardie's website, Living Life with the Houstons. They have some cute kids. They are so cute. Their pictures are fabulous. But not just that, their hearts are pure. They genuinely want to love on people and share their story, share their life. And they have some books. Can you tell us a little bit about the books? And I'll link this wherever I share this video. I will link it.
Happen to have some. Yeah, so we have, as a family, we've authored
higher
2 series of children's books. So this is the first series, The Adventures of David and Joshua. It's a faith-based Christian book series that's based on life with our twin sons, David and Joshua. A lot of lessons, but a lot of fun lessons, both for kids and for parents. And these books are intentional about sparking conversations for families to connect and have some of the conversations that are sometimes difficult for families to have. And our newest series, actually, we have not launched this yet, Kia. So
oh my goodness, we're getting exclusive information.
Yeah, so this is our book series, The Chronicles of Christian Grace. And it's based on life with our daughter, Christian, who her actual name is Christian Grace. Now, we didn't name her with these books in mind, but now it's like, The Chronicles of Christian Grace. So this is also a Christian book series. And the themes in this one really, I mean, you know, we dig into some stuff that that was really intentional based on a lot of the healing that has already taken place in my life. We have one book called Honoring Our Boundaries. And that's a conversation that really helps parents have the conversation about boundaries, not just with their little girls. Of course, Christian is the theme character in this book, but this is for boys and girls, but just really setting those healthy boundaries for yourself and how to have those conversations that some parents, you know, can struggle with. So yes, all of these books are now available for sale at our website, www.livinglifewiththehoustons.com. And also check out our page and sign up for our newsletter updates. We send out very encouraging and informational newsletters that come out every other week, a lot of tools and resources for marriages and for families, and then also just for women that are on their journey as well. So you can sign up on our website and give us your email address so we can stay connected and get all the good updates. We do a little bit of Facebook updates too, but all the good stuff comes through the website. So sign up there.
I love it. Eardie, thank you, girl. It has been a pleasure. And I just pray God's blessings on you and your family as you guys really share the heart of God. I mean, I see the love. It's just like oozing everywhere, but it's that much more meaningful to me, knowing that it's one, authentic, and two, it speaks of the transformation that God has done in your life and will do for others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kia, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. It's such an honor to be here on your platform. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I hope we can do this again.
Yes. Yes. Okay, guys, you take care and join me next month. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, she's gone.